we are going to be having a wee little chat with the amazing and wonderful Megan Bledsoe-Ward, who wrote the wonderful work Nevertheless, which we played in our Women Are Part 1 series. So let's talk about that piece to start off with. You didn't actually write this for us. You wrote it for another bassoon and harp duo. Others of us exist. And
isn't that great. Amazing? I mean, it makes perfect sense. It's such an awesome duo. There's so much, oh my gosh, there's so much potential.
Can you talk a little bit about Nevertheless? And I know it has a slightly political stance as well.
It does. Yeah, I was really inspired by Elizabeth Warren. So the title Nevertheless comes from that phrase, nevertheless she persisted, which of course Mitch McConnell famously said about her after she was objecting to the confirmation of Jeff Sessions as U.S. Attorney General in 2017 by reading a letter from Coretta Scott King, which was talking about how he was unfit for that position because he ignored minority voices and it was just not being an advocate for social justice. I found that very brave and very inspiring, standing up for what you believe in and what you think is the right thing. So that's kind of what led me on the ideological path for Nevertheless. Musically, I was really inspired by two musical artists at the time, Amy Beach and Led Zeppelin. I was listening to a lot of Amy Beach and Led Zeppelin. So you'll notice in the piece, there's a section where I have the harpist weave a piece of paper through the strings. And when you play it, it sounds a little bit like a guitar with distortion pedal. So the idea is finding that cross section of contemporary classical music and rock and roll.
Can you tell us a little bit about who you are? Where do you come from? What do you do?
As you can see, I'm a pianist. No, I am a harpist. I'm originally from Anchorage, Alaska, born and raised. And then I went to school in Rochester, New York to study with Miss Bride at Eastman. Now I live in Honalulu, Hawaii. So big change. My husband is also a musician and he won an audition with an ensemble out here. So we moved here and I am freelancing as a harpist and composer. I travel to play with different orchestras in Alaska and on the West Coast, but I am a full-time musician and educator.
What is your favorite, hats or shoes?
I'm gonna go with shoes because they're always crucial to the performance as a harpist. You really have to consider the shoes as a practical matter, and fashion just kind of goes along with that. Hats, the brims tend to knock on the side of the harp.
So when you were in Rochester, what was your favorite place to go and favorite thing to do?
Let's see. I love the Lilac Festival in the spring. That was a favorite for sure. When it starts to get warm, going for a nice walk down Park Avenue. I really liked going to the Little Theater. They had live music. They had movies. It was like right across the street from my apartment.
Oh yeah, and
grad
Little
school,
had all of the like small international movies as well. So I was like, yeah, French film, yes, great, wonderful. Spanish film, great, gonna go watch that.
Yeah, for sure.
What is your favorite thing to do in Honolulu?
Obviously, the favorite is a lot of people like to go to the beach, which is always nice, but the hiking here is so gorgeous. I really prefer to go for a hike if I had to choose one or the other on a given day.
If you could write for any combination of instruments, what would it be?
Oh my goodness, this is a great question. I really like the wacky combinations of instruments.
As harpists, we have to create them.
Harp and bassoon might have been my favorite so far. I'm partial to those instruments because I actually played bassoon for about 10 years. And so I felt like I knew both instruments fairly well going into that.
You are not the only harpist I know who was also a bassoonist. My teacher from Manchester, Ariel Jones, who is wonderful, was also a bassoonist harpist. Which
really?
Is
I didn't know that. Wow. Super enjoyed that ensemble. I think if I could take that core and add some percussion, maybe a vocalist, because then you have all the bases totally covered. All of those instruments are incredibly versatile. The tone colors that you could create with those different sub combinations would be really interesting, I think.
You play a lot of jazz as well as classical music. Can you tell us how you got into playing jazz on the harp, which is just one of the most fun things to do? And I love it when we get to prove people wrong that you can play jazz on the harp.
Yeah, exactly. That's a fun thing. Yeah, I got into it pretty young because my aunt is a jazz pianist and vocalist, and she was my musical idol when I was growing up. She was my first music teacher when I was 3 years old, and so I always wanted to do what she did, except for she was pianist and I was a harpist. So she really got me inspired to do some jazz, and then I studied classical music in college, of course, but when I did my DMA at University of Washington, I had a little bit more freedom in my doctorate degree, and so I wrote my doctoral dissertation on the harp in jazz and American pop music. So that allowed me to really delve into the history and the culture and what's been done so far. And a lot of people don't realize harp has been involved in jazz in basically as long as jazz has been alive.
Oh,
Since
yeah.
the 1920s, there have been harpists playing jazz, and it's just not a visible instrument as
It's
much, so
not
people are
spoken
surprised.
about. Yeah, and
Yeah.
it kind of got boxed in a way of not being a jazz instrument, but you just have to look at Dorothy Ashby and Alice Coltrane and all of these incredible pioneers.
Yeah,
Who
tons and tons, and even
and
farther
Harpo
back.
Marx even have to
Yeah,
mention
Harpo
Harpo
Marx.
Marx.
Yeah, Caspar Reardon, Adele Gerard. I mean, tons of people really making their names in jazz harp playing.
When you go out to restaurants, do you prefer to get a starter or dessert?
Both is not an option.